Hello, my name's Ellie. I'm the System UI PM on Chrome OS, and I'm super excited today to talk to you about the evolution of Chrome OS System UI. Cool, so we're going to see interesting trends and patterns you'll pick up on the UI as we go through the talk today. This talk focuses on how we went from this scribbled icon here on the left to the polished product that we are today. I wasn't around for the early days. I've been working on System UI for a little bit over a year now. So the first half of the talk is stories from Alex Kusher and some of the original PMs that founded Chrome OS. And the second half of the talk will focus on what we're working on in System UI today and track that progression over the years. Before I jump in, there is a QR code. Please use that to ask me questions so that as we go, we can remember questions, and you'll see a lot of different UI, so it'll be interesting to see what you pick up on and what you want to learn more about. This mock here is one of the very first mocks and prototypes of Chrome OS. This is not a browser window. It's actually the entire OS. So the team experimented with many things. Clearly, this looks like a Chrome window as the foundation of the OS, hence the name Chrome OS. At the top left, you'll see these pinned tabs. You could pin apps as tabs. The farthest left, you'll notice, is the launcher as a pinned tab. So this was one of the first mocks, prototypes, concepts of Chrome OS that the team experimented with. Now, this is a CR48. It's the first Chromebook that we gave out publicly. We shared it with influencers, press, public users. It was a non-branded device and actually our first full-size laptop on Chrome OS. The team started off thinking they were going to build good netbooks and then pivoted to putting the board into a full-size laptop. And you can see that that's the trend we followed today. This interface is actually the user interface we ended up shipping on the CR48 device. So that first mock we looked at was a mock prototype, an initial direction. This is what actually shipped. A big core concept that the UI team and designers and PMs focused on was how can we strip down what it means to engage with information, start from the simplest user interface, and then add back the things that are really important. So you can see, again, it looks like a browser window. You'll notice the time, the battery level, the Wi-Fi in the upper right-hand corner. This looks very similar to our status tray in the bottom right-hand corner on today's version of Chrome OS. So they really started with this idea of simplicity, stripping things down, and then adding the most essential things back to maintain that core value of a simple user interface. On this slide, you'll note that the windows, there's another little button, and this is what users could press to switch between the full-size windows. Kind of the first concept of a window manager on Chrome OS. And it's interesting as we see the mocks progress today, we'll see that that icon in the upper right-hand corner starts to transform into the minimize window X button that we're more familiar with on an operating system today, and we see on the Chrome OS windows. Here again, you'll see that we've got those main windows overlapping each other. So this is just showing what would happen when you had multiple windows open. There was a lot of concern about feeling trapped in the UI. So there was no ability to ask for side-by-side, but on most laptops, side-by-side clips content or shrinks it to be too small. And that's why they originally went with the full windows and being able to switch between them. People preferred this overlapping windows, but quickly realized that this didn't really work well on large monitors. So again, just another image of when you have those windows open, they're all on top of each other, it feels very crowded. So as we transitioned between form factors, we had Stumpy, which was the first Chromebox. And when we plugged this previous UI we're looking at into a large monitor, 30-inch screen, we quickly realized that one Chrome window wasn't going to cut it anymore for the UI. So now we move towards a UI with a resemblance of an official OS. We have a launcher with apps on it, a taskbar that you see at the bottom left-hand corner, Finally, we got to the point of adding a wallpaper, which is funny because as Alex Kusher reminded me, the very first advertisement of Chrome OS had a tagline. It doesn't have anything, not even a wallpaper. And then a few years later, we introduced a wallpaper. It was one of the highest requested features. We went from this single window UI, change in form factors of new devices. And now I'm going to jump into more specific areas like window manager. We're going to talk about the launcher and the shelf and how it evolved, notifications and quick settings. And then we're also going to dive into how we're thinking about system UI and its role in helping users be more productive today. All right, let's talk about the evolution of Chrome OS's window manager. As we jump in, it's really important to remember, similar to the one window UI we started with, that held a core concept for Chrome OS to start simple and add things as we go that are really another core concept. And the early days of Chrome OS up until today, with our 6-week release cycle, cement this mentality that iteration is good, and this is what we strive for. So here we're looking at an example of a tab switcher that the team built. Very visual and novel at the time with its record flipping like UI. We tried to see if this was better than what we had, but it ended up not being better. So we built something, we saw if it worked, it didn't, so we were moving on to the next idea. That brings us to Aura. After the first single window UI, we moved on to having our first window manager. This project was called Aura. So we're finally having the capabilities of a full screen window. Now we have the possibility of multiple windows that can overlap each other. They're not quite stacked as we saw in the first UI. New apps open from the new tab page. There's settings only on a page and in the top right. And we have a dedicated login screen. So we're starting to get window manager that's more resemblant of what we see today on Chrome OS. Here you can see we have the functionality to have overlapping windows, and we're taking a look at the quick settings in the bottom right-hand corner. Take a good look at that because we'll show future mocks that show how it evolves and changes as we get to the version that we're on today. Another photo of how these windows overlapped on Aura, and this was a new thing compared to the initially launched UI seen on CR48. We started playing around with snapping and window tile managing to see if we could find a good fit. You can see that here with top aligning the windows. And what we learned from Aura is that people prefer small screen setups with overlapping central windows. They want extra space for the occasional thing that needs it, games or videos. The team never found any tiling window manager that worked really well. The noise of a free-form windowing system wasn't actually a cost to most people. People are fine moving the windows around, arranging them exactly where they want to be, especially when we build in intelligent defaults. So you'll see that as a lasting factor in our UI today. So now we'll move on to Ash, and this is very resemblant with a few UI changes of the window manager we have on Chrome OS today. So we see in this mock, single window, single tab. We can also have that single full screen window with multiple tabs. And here we're looking at that multiple window, multiple tab scenario, free-form window management. The user arranges the windows over each other. We've got that free space in the background. You're seeing the wallpaper. So we've come a long way from that single window UI we initially shipped. And here we're looking at split screen. So we didn't go with a complete tiling window manager, but we did build in those intelligent defaults that we talked about. So we do help users snap the windows so that they can be looking at two equal widths at the same time for that split screen experience. And that brings us a bit to our final UI window manager that we've landed on. Full screen window, multiple windows are possible, New apps are opened from that new tab page, the launcher. We see you've got that taskbar at the bottom, status area moves from the top located login screen. One thing that's kind of interesting and embodies the spirit of Chrome OS is that we're constantly, like I said at the beginning, trying new things. So building something, seeing if it works, and either implementing it or moving it on. This is an example of an exploration called Athena, which is this idea of bringing together launcher, search, and overview onto the home or desktop experience. So just one of the explorations that we didn't end up pursuing, but it's super interesting to see how innovative that the team was initially. And we'll see some of these patterns start to come back as we continue to go through the UI. So now we're going to talk about the evolution of Chrome OS's launcher and shelf. So this is what the launcher looked like in around 2011. You'll see that the taskbar at the bottom left has all the apps. That's typically what we call the shelf on Chrome OS. And there's actually an icon there that gives you access to the launcher, access to open all your apps. So this is one of the first versions of the launcher. Around 2015, we jumped to this version. So we're presenting search to you directly. This looks a little more resemblant of a Chrome tab, and you see your apps right under the search bar and can access all of them. Now we jump to the first convertible touch-friendly launcher. This one probably looks very familiar if you're using a Chromebook today. It is basically our live version, although we're constantly making updates every 6 weeks, but it's the closest mock we've seen to what's live today. And we have the first tablet and touch-friendly launcher. So that was a big improvement as we started moving into tablet form factors. We needed a launcher that was touch-friendly, so we had to adapt the UI to accommodate for that. You'll also probably recognize this. This is the peaking launcher. It came hand in hand with that transition of the launcher being tablet and touch-friendly. One of the unique things about Chrome OS is that we don't have a separate operating system for tablet and clamshell mode. So we have to make sure that the UI works seamlessly across both. Peaking launcher arrives out of this idea that now we have a touch-friendly launcher that's on the home screen for tablet mode, and we need a transitional point between the full launcher and clamshell. And that's what brought the peaking launcher to Chrome OS. All right, so that's how shelf and launcher evolved. And now we're going to move on to the evolution of tablet mode UI. You might be seeing a pattern here that a lot of times, right, our different form factors, the different devices, the different screen sizes we're building for led to us changing our UI. I'm going to take a second to remind you, please use the QR code, ask questions. I would love to dive into anything that you want to learn more about. Alrighty, tablet shelf. So before M80, this image that we're looking at on the left, we'll see that app icons are displayed by default when the user is in an app in tablet mode, making the experience less immersive. And what we mean by that is that that shelf and those apps take up space on a small screen when you're fully immersed with content. So we wanted to figure out, is there something we can improve here? You'll also notice that you have a limited number of apps, especially on an 8-inch shelf like that. So that's probably your smallest width for a Chrome OS device today in portrait mode. 5 app icons max would be in this view, and your default pinned apps will show in an overflow menu in the first user session. So you can see that there's in the shelf a like ... icon, which is how you get into the overflow. So now moving to the UI on the right, we decided, how can we make this better? How can we let users be more immersed in their content, focus less on system UI when they're not trying to navigate places? So we wanted to separate out app icons from this mini shelf to enable immersive content and make the shelf more scalable. We wanted to remove that back, home, and the overview icons to make the UI cleaner and more content friendly. So this is a little bit of the design process we go through as we evolve system UI. In this case, you're focusing on a 10-inch screen size and that immersive experience in tablet mode. Okay, so if we remove home, back, and overview buttons, how are users going to get around? Gestures. So with this UI refresh, we also introduced gestures. And you can see here that from that more immersive in-app tablet shelf, a user can swipe up to bring up a hot seat of apps. This is our floating model hot seat shelf. We also looked at the overflow. Previously, that overflow, like I mentioned, brought up another row of apps above the shelf. We decided to change this into scrollable shelf because now using a gesture to bring up a hot seat, it's a better affordance to be able to scroll through apps as opposed to see that double row of hot seat. So it's interesting that the smaller form factor led us to changing how the shelf works, which led us to introducing gestures and changing these overflows. So you can really see that when we invest in different devices and different form factors and screen sizes, we do a lot to help the UI experience as best as possible. And this is the reason and the cause for a lot of the evolution of our system UI. All right, so we saw that swipe up gesture to bring up the hot seat. We also have a back gesture because we removed that back button. So with a swipe back, users can now navigate back through the stack to the home. And we introduced a gesture to get to overview. So users can now swipe up and hold to get to overview. Introducing these gestures was a huge user behavior change and change for our system UI. So we needed a way to educate users. And we evolved some of our thinking on how to do this by really hoping to address this new user need in context. So we introduced this idea of nudges. You can see here that at the bottom of the screen, there's UI there that says swipe up to go home. This is an in-context nudge based on the user opening an app, which signifies they might be ready to go home, so that we surface this nudge to teach them swipe up to go home. So using that in-context trigger and presenting UI in line to help teach users how to navigate with gestures. And this is something that we are excited to continue doing throughout the UI as we introduce new UI, make changes, and add features to Chrome OS. We'll see another example of a nudge here. This is the nudge to go to overview. You'll see that text pop up as the shelf jumps a bit. We use motion to get the user's attention and then also have that message. Again, this is triggered off a user opening multiple apps or being in a scenario in which we think they might be interested in going to overview. So we try to match that intent to the prominence of the nudge. This is an example for a back nudge. So similar to the two we just saw, making sure that we have good user intent, that a user is ready to learn this functionality, and then prompting them to try it out. Another thing that came along with building for a smaller form factor and something we needed to address in the UI was our quick settings and our notifications. So quick settings was something I mentioned all the way back when we were looking at that first single window UI and then Aura, our first window manager. And I said, remember this because we're going to see a mock of it later. So you can see that it changed a lot. It now has the dark theming. It has feature pods. Before it was more of a gray box with different buttons on it. So it's interesting to see how these things evolve. Additionally, that status tray in the bottom right-hand corner, some of our first mocks we were looking at had similar things, right? The time, battery level Wi-Fi in the upper right-hand corner of the single window. Now we see it move down, and we see the visual design evolve mock after mock. What we're really looking at here is we needed to make sure that notifications in quick settings were scalable for the UI. So in this mock, you can see that we introduced scalable notification center so that when you expand quick settings, because you're focused on using that functionality, we actually collapse the notifications, which was a new concept that hadn't been around on Chrome OS. And instead of showing you the notifications open, we show the different icons indicating what notifications you have there. You can quickly click that center to open it and reference it. So a lot of that UI I just mentioned, you probably recognized. It's been rolled out between 83 all the way to 86. So if you have a Chromebook, you've most likely interacted with it. And that brings me to talking about what comes next on System UI. So we saw us go from one single window and launch the CR48 to going to Aura, the first window manager, progressing to Ash, and then introducing a lot of the scalable UI that we saw with 10-inch form factor devices. Now, a lot of the work that the System UI team is doing is looking at System UI surfaces through a productivity lens. So a lot about what we're thinking is, how can we make users more productive through these critical surfaces, right? We have the shelf at the bottom of the screen, which has your pinned apps. Those are the apps your user is most likely using frequently. We have the launcher, which gives you access to search in your app grid. That's a key way to navigate the device. How can we improve users' productivity through that? Get them to places faster, shortcut critical user journeys. We have notifications, which is the best way to be notified from apps, from messages, from important people. How can we make this experience more elegant and glanceable so you know exactly what you need to look at when you need to? And then quick settings controls how you set your device up and how you customize it and personalize it and connect to Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. So how can we improve all of these things by helping a user be more productive? Through our COVID research with work from home, transitioning to learn from home, we see that on average, users task switch or get interrupted as often as every 3 minutes. And when you get interrupted, it can take an average of 23 minutes to get back to your task. So this provides us a lot of opportunity to help users be more productive. And these critical System UI surfaces can play a big role in that story. What does productivity mean and how do we think about it? That makes this area really exciting and challenging at the same time. Users are productive in different ways. As we talk to users across enterprise, EDU, consumer, we see that some users want to be productive by watching a YouTube video for 30 minutes before they jump into something. That's how they get excited to do their homework and to finish things. Other users want that access to their calendar with one click. Every time they come to their Chromebook, they're opening a Chrome window and they just want to get back to their calendar. So as we build for all of these users, we have 3 guiding principles that our UXR has revealed. We want to help users save time, minimize distractions, and maintain context. And we're looking at our system services to do this. So we're thinking about all the critical user journeys users take. How can we shortcut that to help them save time? We're trying to find ways to reduce unnecessary switching so that we can minimize those distractions and interruptions, and definitely try to minimize that average of 23 minutes to get back to a task after having a distraction. And we're trying to help users resume their task quickly, thinking about how we can cut down that ramp up time to get them back into their task and make progress fast. So these next few features and UI components we're going to go to is our attempt to address those 3 guiding principles. First, we're going to look at a new screen capture experience. What we're trying to do here is make screen capture more intuitive, discoverable, and powerful. So we're looking at adding a entry point to quick settings, a feature pod. This will be the first software entry point to make it more discoverable. Right now in the GIF, you'll see a new UI capture mode bar. The idea is to add that UI to make screen capture more intuitive, so that for the first time, users can actually see in the UI the different modes that are possible to capture the screen with. So window mode, partial screenshot, full screenshot. Prior to this, you would have to know the exact shortcut to enter the mode to take that particular screenshot. We're also working on adding screen recording functionality to the OS for stronger, more powerful screen capture experience. Another feature we were working on is a feature called Tote. The idea here is to help users access their frequently and recent screenshots and downloads and frequently access files. So we curate screenshots and downloads, and we let users pin frequently used files so that they can, with one click from the shelf, get back to the content they need. Additional features we're working on are called multi-paste and share sheet. Multi-paste is a visual clipboard history that we are helping users reduce that switching piece, reduce unnecessary distractions and interruptions by providing a clipboard history so that you can copy multiple things, speed up that repetitive data entry, and reduce switching back and forth between the source you're copying from and where you're pasting. And share sheet is another feature that helps users quickly transfer content. We're also adding quick answers to the OS. So this is UI functionality that lets you quickly left click or right click on a word and have the definition or the translation right there for you. So added UI that helps with productivity, shortcuts that critical user journey. Today, as users listen to media and different media sources, we see those media controls come through in UI form of notifications. We're working on removing those notifications, pulling all those controls into one dedicated OS media control in the quick settings. You'll see that chip there in the middle image, which is consolidating the current media source that is live. You can quickly play or pause that, and you can click on that media chip to extend to a subpage in quick settings that gives you finer access to all media sources that are playing for one-click access. If you venture to that top right corner, you'll see a pin icon. This actually allows you to pin the feature to the shelf so that if you're someone that's constantly listening to media, constantly going between sources, you can have one-click access through the shelf. As you talk about notifications, one important thing is to quickly, at a glance, know which apps are requesting your attention so that you can make a conscious choice on when to check your notifications and which apps to address. We're adding app badging to make this easier. Badges will be added to apps to resemble notifications so that users can check their UI with a glance to help them be more productive. So these are a lot of features that we're working on as we look at system UI through the lens of productivity. Just to recap our whole progression, Chrome OS started with this single window UI. It had a lot of overlapping. Users felt a bit trapped in it. Then we iterated and we created Aura, a window manager. This came with new form factors, the necessity to actually have windows that overlap. We experimented with different tile managers, window managers to actually pop the windows into the right locations, and we decided that users weren't disturbed by that free-form window management, but we needed intelligent defaults. So we added things like split screen and overview to make sure that we have that intelligent piece there. Then we adapted system UI again for tablet and touch-friendly UI, and made sure that we could seamlessly go between both, since Chrome OS is one operating system that fits both form factors. And now we've transitioned into optimizing these system UI surfaces through the productivity lens so we can make sure that we help users get things done fast. I'm now going to take a stop there to answer any questions. Let me check the Slido. No questions. Okay. Well, this is a great time. If you have any questions, please use the QR code. Additionally, if you have any ideas or things you want to see in Chrome OS, things you think can make Chrome OS more productive, ideas for different system surfaces, it would also be a great time to ask a question about it or use the QR code to let me know so that on the System UI team, we can take those ideas and think about them. All right, well, that was the evolution of Chrome OS System UI. We went all the way back 10 years ago to where we are today. And we have made a lot of progress. So continue to look out for new things with every 6-week release. We'll definitely be working on a lot of exciting stuff for 2021. And if you do have any questions or comments, please add them so that we can either address them as future requests or I can answer the questions now or in the future. Feel free to email me, gzadina@google.com.